Hello and welcome to another episode of Father and Joe. I'm Joe Rocky here with Father Boniface Hicks. And Father, with this being Christmas Eve New Year's Eve that this episode is originally releasing upon, I had been thinking about this topic for a while, and I think this might be the most apt time to do it. And that is going back to something you said in our last episode about how it can be really challenging to put our modern problems, values, whatever the terminology is, upon the past, particularly the further back in time we're going in history. And I look at that from the other perspective. And admittedly, up front, this is going to sound pessimistic. But there is a notion that you see, I think, pretty prominently within society now that what difference does what I do matter? I can't really do anything that's going to change anything, so I might as well just do whatever's easy. Or whatever fill in the blank you're feeling like doing at the time. And I look at how things change, and in history books, we kind of just zoom into something that seems particularly interesting and then zoom out again. Like, for instance, when you look at American history, most people don't really talk about, I don't know, the 1760s when basically pirates were raiding the entire seaboard and how that affected the Revolutionary War. But no, we zoom right into the Revolution. Things are cool. We zoom out for a little bit until Washington shows up. There's like a 2-decade gap in between there that we never talk about. We talk about Washington a little bit, maybe a little bit of Jefferson. Zoom out. Oh, we're at war again with the Brits. Let's zoom in here in 1812. Zoom out a little bit. And okay, Civil War, we got to pay attention now. But my point is that that's just American history. In global history, it's even bigger than that. We zoom out of all those in-between parts, and we don't look at the contributions that even one little thing build into something bigger and better that we take for granted today. I mean, just going down the technological route, and not even like, and I'm probably missing steps in here. Electricity is invented. A crazy thing that at the time was deemed as the biggest charlatan waste of money. No one will ever use this thing ever. And we all think of Edison. Boom, he comes up with the idea one day. And it changed the world. Well, that zooms out about 17 people along the way who had micro steps to get there. And then next thing you know, boom, AC, DC, etc. I'm not going to go down the history of electricity. But the point is that no matter what element we have within our lives right now, I choose electricity because everything around me is run by electricity. That we just take for granted today. There was periods before World War I that all the people talked about was flight, electricity, and fireworks. That was common culture of talking about it, how to grow it, how to make things faster. People had homemade gliders they jumped off their roofs with. Like, people were trying to invent things and push things forward. And now what do we have? We have jumbo jets that can transport your Amazon package from China to here and get it to you in 2 days. All these things that we take for granted, we can see really easy in the economic technological space. But it's also, and I think that this is possibly bigger, it happens in the societal and moral space. Yes, we can each take a step back and point this in both directions. So technologically speaking, it only grows upon itself. You don't wake up one day and say, you know what, that electricity thing's the worst thing ever. All society's going to stop using it today. Well, unfortunately, morality can take a step backwards using the electricity analogy. People can make bad decisions, impress them upon followers, younger people, etc. And then they now have a direction of weaving backwards and weaving towards something that's more evil. But we also have the opposite of taking a step towards goodness and then taking another step towards goodness. And we see things that used to be commonplace. Red light districts in every city. just to pick out one example, that was commonplace everywhere in America. There'd be its own particular red light district. Not so much, because steps along the way saying to change this and do this better. And any moral thought can go down that direction. But I bring this up because it is, to me, a reason for utmost hope, in that your little step today, when we look back at it, a collection of very little steps over and over and over again go a great deal of distance. And to me, this being the season of New Year's resolutions and what are you going to do better and all this stuff, and knowing that most people treat these as a fad and don't ever follow up upon it. But to me, looking at the little thing you did today, whether it be morally or just take weight loss, did you eat the extra fattening food or not? Just minor steps, yes or no, are great things that make massive differences, but we don't focus upon. That's part of history we zoom out on, the in-between part that we don't notice. But at the end of the day, they lead to such massive and important changes that we wouldn't be able to do. We wouldn't be able to know. Again, going back to the example of 2,000 years ago, it was totally okay to just wake up and say, we're murdering every 2-year-old and younger. That was an acceptable thing that happened. Today, that would never be able to be happening, at least here. There's parts of the world we got to keep changing that with, but at least here. And I'd like to point out that, each of us have power in this. Each of us have the ability to make a choice every moment and every day. What direction do we want to go with? Are we going positive or are we going negative? And I wanted to bring that up on New Year's because I thought that it was a good starting point. It was a reflection I've been having, and I felt that'd be a good thing to share, given timing and all that, but especially talking to you because you're going to know about this stuff way deeper than I, because you're a PhD in this type of thing and I'm not.
Well, yeah, I think it's good to enter into the new year with confidence that even little decisions, little changes that we make can have a significant impact in our own life and in the lives of others. And I don't think you have to look to history to note that. You can probably see the way that picking up a particular book, meeting a particular person, deciding to get up at a particular time, choosing a particular job. There are a lot of little decisions that have led to potentially momentous consequences in our lives, and that could be in a negative way, but certainly lots of things in a positive way. It's interesting how many times how incidental it was that you met the person that you then spent the rest of your life with in marriage, or the things that came together to introduce you to a boss, and that made the defining difference in how your life unfolded, or maybe the decision to go to mass on Christmas, as we talked about last week, or somebody actually reaching out and just giving you a smile and a handshake and saying, it's really beautiful to see you, Merry Christmas, could be the defining difference in someone's life that gives them a little bit of hope, a little bit of strength, helps them to feel loved, and turns things around. And then if you want to sort of make that more dramatic, who knows who that person is, that, the Thomas Edison or the Nikola Tesla, who is going to invent electricity, or one of the steps along the way, or who knows who that is in terms of the influencer that person could be. I was thinking while you're talking, what was St. Paul's mother like, and what little decisions that she made that gave him the kind of human capacity, the emotional firmness, the convictions, those people who are, as you say, because we zoom out, they get lost to history. Those are the stories that God saves up in his heart. I don't know how many of our history books mirror what is in God's heart. But I know that the storylines that have been largely forgotten, that are written about little people who are not in the world's eye, those are the stories that are written in God's heart, and those are the stories that are told into eternity. So it really gives us some hope to say, making a decision as we enter into this new year um, is can have a massive impact. And as much as I think it's important to say, especially in the face of the kinds of world forces that seem so uh, impossible to uh, adjust, to overcome, that yeah, the little decisions that we make do make a tremendous difference. uh, I think there was, I don't remember all the details now. I seem to remember a couple elections ago, maybe it was when Obama was elected, but they were talking about the micro donations really turned the tide. That was a time in which opening up, whatever donations on PayPal or something. I don't remember what all the details are, but that makes a huge difference. I think social media, it's like 180 characters or something, makes this big difference. And things that seem small and insignificant can turn out to have a massive impact. And we can't always anticipate that. We would like to know the things that are going to make, what's the decision I make today that's going to make the massive difference? You don't get that knowledge. You just have to make the right decision, one after another, and not discount things smaller or larger, but do the next thing that's in front of you and do it as best as you can. And that may be the very thing that you trace back later, a path to which ended up in something really meaningful, really powerful in your life. And so, uh, and I appreciate you brought out those statements from history and different significant figures. I mean, I can say for myself, like, I, let's say a few people know who I am today. And why do they know who I am? Because I am a priest and a monk, because I teach on the faith. Why do I have faith? Because a total stranger came up to me at Penn State and invited me to study the Bible with him one on one. If I hadn't sat there that day, if he had looked and gotten cold feet and decided not to initiate that conversation, where would my life be? I don't know. But uh, so, and I share that to set in motion an invitation for all of us. And maybe you have a story like that, Joe, that you'd be willing to share with us. But I think that would be a nice way to enter into New Year's. And maybe it's a story from this past year, maybe it's a story from 20 years ago. But where's a little decision, where's a little action that would be so easily overlooked by the history books, and yet was a defining moment in our lives that could have so easily passed us by? I think it's great to share those kinds of stories. And then we see how the God is also the master of the details. He's paying attention to all of these little details. So that should send us into, it could send us into a place where we suddenly feel terrified that we're going to miss all of the major things in our lives by 3 seconds or something. And that shouldn't be the message at all, but rather that God is in charge of all of those things. And our willingness just to show up in ways that we don't know all of the impact of, but we're just doing our best to be faithful this moment, that can really turn the tide for somebody, including ourselves.
Yeah, I think actually what it shows is the opposite. Not that you should be in fear of missing any given moment, but that there's essentially, as long as you're actively and willingly being engaged, there's essentially an unlimited amount of moments. When you were at Penn State, you weren't just living and hiding in your dorm room and then not going out and engaging anyone. As long as you want to be active and engage with people, the natural notion of people create moments with each other. And I think that that's something that yeah, that there could be something special, and you could have expectations and a desire that something could go somewhere. I see this all the time in the sales world. In the nature of sales, you're giving someone a great product that you believe in, and you know it's going to help them. Well, it doesn't mean they always see what you see and that they always go through it or not, right? So there's plenty of times when I've thought that, I thought this person was going to go through and, become a client or a client of one of my clients, depending on what level we're talking about here. And it just didn't happen. But then we sit back, we figure out maybe why, what do we do wrong? Who would be better to talk to? And the next thing I know, boom, the world's never the same. And we're now helping an industry that never thought that these two industries would be merged together. Specifically, what I'm thinking about right now off the top of my head is one of my clients creates custom songs. Like, they actually listen to you and they make a song about what's going on in your world. And we paired them up with funeral homes, people who are going through so much grief in their moment and don't know how to outlay it in a way that doesn't end up in creating your own physical harm, whether that be through grief, drunkenness, whatever. But participating and actively creating a song that really is incredibly high quality is incredibly helpful in this moment of great loss, which, quite frankly, if you're at a funeral home, you're experiencing a moment of great loss. So these two industries never would have thought of connecting with each other, really, at least on a big way. And we're trying to spearhead and change this. We went from, just trying to connect with people like, hey, have a better Valentine's Day gift or whatever, to, you know what, this is a moment that people are quite frankly, in general, scared to address. Those people don't walk towards those that are in hysterical grief, let alone try to have an answer of how to help. And would we have gotten to this road had the first time we've done a Valentine's Day or a wedding day campaign gone off like crazy? No, we'd probably just be like another person just out there selling flowers. Just we'd be selling the love songs. But these moments of that didn't work out, we went to go find something else, make a really big difference. And they really do impact people's lives moving forward. And the other part is that I don't know every person who benefited from this. The vast majority I don't know who wrote a song for their parents or siblings or what have you, that got through that moment. It's one of those things that I think are really one of the great parts of life, of how you can help people by creating something that's positive and powerful, even if you don't know or the exact impact that it has. Because obviously it's an economic sale. There's money that gets transferred, but the real value that gets across has nothing to do with the dollars and cents. It's the being able to accelerate through that grief process. There's probably a better way of saying this. You're more of this world than I am, but being able to know the emotional side that life is going to wake up tomorrow, and yeah, dad might not be here, but it's still going to be able to go, and I don't need to shut down and all of that stuff. So that's what you asked for, a specific example, and that's one that came to us here and relatively recently at that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, those things make a big difference. We never know what the impact of a little decision, a little connection, a little encouragement is going to make, and the cascading impact that can have. So let's start off a new year in a positive way. And this year is a Jubilee year, where we are called to be pilgrims of hope in the year 2025. So the church holds a Jubilee year every 25 years. Many of us will only see one more Jubilee year in our life, and so take advantage of this one. And that's a reason for hope, giving people a reason for hope as we enter into this new year.
And what a beautiful thought to end this episode with. And, if everyone can help out by doing a resolution of sharing us to 5 strangers, this could go along with the theme of both this episode and the last, and also would really help us grow. If each of you sent us to 5 people you've never sent us to before, we'd be greatly, greatly appreciative. And thank you for that.